Sir, I can't leave until at least reinforcements
You
get
got
here.
3 minutes.
You know that elderly man crying at the cemetery in the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan? Most people think it's Tom Hanks's character who has grown old. They're wrong. It's actually Private Ryan himself, and Spielberg tricked you on purpose. This deception is just one of 20 strange secrets hidden in plain sight throughout the film that completely change how you experience one of the most influential war movies ever made. Starting with number 20, that old man's confusion wasn't an accident. Harrison Young plays the elderly James Ryan, not Captain Miller. Spielberg deliberately cut the film to make you assume it was Tom Hanks's character until the very last minutes. The camera work tricks your brain by never quite showing the transition clearly, always cutting away at just the right moment to maintain the mystery. The film opens on the old man's eyes, then cuts to the beach invasion, making you naturally assume we're seeing Miller's memories. If you've ever argued with someone about who that old man was, now you know the truth. Spielberg wanted that confusion because it makes the ending hit differently when you realize whose memory we've been watching all along. The entire film becomes a different experience on second viewing once you know this secret. Moving to number 19 brings us to something even more shocking about where they filmed the most famous battle scene in cinema history. That brutal Omaha Beach sequence wasn't shot in France at all. It was filmed at Curracloe Beach in County Wexford, Ireland, over the course of 2 months. But here's the really wild part. Those hundreds of soldiers getting mowed down in the surf were actually Irish Army reservists. About 750 Irish soldiers put on American and German uniforms to recreate D-Day. The Irish government gave them full cooperation, even allowing controlled explosions on a public beach. The real Normandy Beach is a protected memorial site, so they couldn't film there even if they wanted to. Ireland gave them the perfect combination of the right beach slope, the right color sand, and a government willing to loan them an actual army. The local community in Wexford still talks about the summer Hollywood invaded their beach. Number 18 reveals why the combat scenes look so different from every war movie before it. The secret lies in what they did to the cameras. Cinematographer Janusz Kaminski literally broke the normal settings by changing the shutter angle from the standard 180 degrees down to 45 or 90 degrees. This creates that choppy, staccato effect where every piece of shrapnel and every blood spray looks hyper-real and sharp instead of smoothly blurred. Think about how a normal movie shows someone running. It's smooth and flowing. But in Saving Private Ryan, every movement has this jarring mechanical quality that makes your eyes uncomfortable. Your brain expects motion blur when things move fast, but when it's missing, everything feels more violent and immediate. After this movie, every action film started copying this technique whenever they wanted their violence to feel real instead of Hollywood smooth. Films like Gladiator, Black Hawk Down, and even The Bourne Identity all borrowed this visual language. But the visual tricks go deeper with secret number 17. The team didn't just mess with the shutters, they actually removed the protective coatings from the camera lenses. These coatings normally prevent light from bouncing around inside the lens, but Kaminski wanted those imperfections. He wanted the image to feel unstable and raw. They also used a device called a panaflasher to deliberately fog the film negative before shooting, which lifts the black levels and makes everything look washed out and aged. Then, in the lab, they flash the negative again to flatten the colors even more. The process is called pre-fogging and post-flashing, and it's usually considered a mistake that ruins footage. All of this was designed to make brand new footage look like it came from a 1940s newsreel that had been sitting in an archive for 50 years. The degraded quality actually makes it feel more authentic, not less. Secret number 16 explains why the blood in this movie looks so disturbingly different from typical Hollywood gore. The production used a chemical process called ENR, which stands for Ernesto Novelli Remo, at about 70% strength during the film development. This process leaves silver in the film that would normally be washed away, which deepens the blacks and mutes all the colors. But here's the weird part. This process turned their fake blood the wrong color, making it look too candy red and fake. So the effects team had to add blue dye to the blood formula to compensate. They went through dozens of tests to get the exact right shade. The result is that sickly, dark blood color that makes your stomach turn because it looks more like real blood than movie blood ever had before. It's not bright red like typical Hollywood blood, but dark and muddy, the way blood actually looks when mixed with sand and seawater. Number 15 might be the most disturbing production secret of all. Many of those soldiers you see losing limbs in the opening battle were actually real amputees wearing fake prosthetic limbs rigged with explosives. Spielberg hired dozens of amputee and paraplegic performers and fitted them with realistic prosthetics that could be blown off with squibs and small pyrotechnics. These performers came from all over the United States and Europe, many of them veterans themselves who had lost limbs in various conflicts. When you see a leg get blown off and the physics look too real to be special effects, that's because you're watching a real person who already lost that limb wearing a fake one that's being destroyed. The emotional impact is different because your brain recognizes real physics from fake, even if you don't consciously know why. These performers said they wanted to help show the reality of what combat injuries actually look like. For secret number 14, we need to talk about why Spielberg threw away one of his most powerful tools. The director who meticulously storyboarded every shot of Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark refused to storyboard any of the combat scenes in Saving Private Ryan. This was a massive risk for such an expensive and complex sequence. He wanted to react like a real combat cameraman would, finding shots in the moment, missing things, catching others by accident. Military advisor Dale Dye stood right next to him during filming, telling him where real soldiers would be, what they'd do, how they'd move. Sometimes Spielberg would start filming something, and Dye would grab his shoulder and point him toward more realistic action. The camera becomes another soldier on the beach, not an all-seeing eye watching from above. That's why you feel like you're in the battle instead of watching it. The camera gets sand on the lens, blood splatters across it, and it shakes when explosions go off nearby. Number 13 reveals just how much this movie affected real veterans. Within days of the movie's release, the Department of Veterans Affairs had to set up a special hotline for veterans experiencing flashbacks. The number was 1-800-827-1000, and it was staffed 24 hours a day. Some World War II vets walked out of theaters, not in anger but in recognition. Others said it was the first time any movie matched what combat actually felt like in their memories. Veterans who hadn't talked about the war in 50 years suddenly started opening up to their families. The VA actually published the hotline number in newspapers because so many veterans were calling regular VA facilities, saying the movie had triggered memories they'd buried for 50 years. No war movie before or since has required an official government response to manage its psychological impact. Therapists reported that the film became a breakthrough tool for treating PTSD in veterans who had never been able to articulate their experiences before. Here's something in secret number 12 that most viewers completely miss because of the language barrier. Those two soldiers who surrender on the beach while speaking what sounds like German aren't speaking German at all. They're speaking Czech, and they're saying they aren't Germans and begging not to be shot. The exact words translate to something like, "Please don't shoot me. I am not German. I am Czech. I didn't kill anyone." During World War II, the Wehrmacht forced men from occupied territories to fight in units called Ostbataillon, or Eastern Battalions. These Czech conscripts are trying to explain they were forced to fight, but the American soldiers don't understand them. It adds a whole other layer of tragedy to a scene that's already brutal, and most English-speaking audiences never even know it happened. The actors playing these soldiers were actually Czech, and Spielberg let them improvise their actual pleas for mercy. Number 11 takes us to a place that never existed. The French town of Ramel, where the final bridge battle happens, isn't real and never was. The entire town was built from scratch on an old airfield at Hatfield Aerodrome north of London. The construction took 3 months and cost millions of dollars. They constructed 3 blocks of a French town, complete with buildings that could be destroyed and rebuilt for multiple takes. And they even built an artificial river with pumps to control the water level. Each building had multiple walls that could be replaced after being destroyed, allowing for numerous takes of the same destruction. Spielberg invented this fictional town because he needed a specific tactical situation for his finale, and no real French town would let them blow up buildings and stage a massive battle. Every building you see getting destroyed was built specifically to be destroyed, with predetermined weak points where the explosions would look most dramatic. The suffering you see on the actors' faces in Secret Number 10 came from real misery they endured before filming even started. Retired Marine Captain Dale Dye put the main cast through 6 days of pure hell in the cold, wet English countryside. The temperature never got above 50 degrees, and it rained almost constantly. He woke them before dawn, force-marched them through mud, made them sleep in the rain, and punished the whole group when one person made a mistake. They had to dig their own foxholes, eat military rations, and were only allowed 4 hours of sleep per night. He refused to call them by their real names, instead calling them all turds, with Tom Hanks designated as turd number 1. Halfway through, the actors voted to quit and go home. They were cold, exhausted, and angry. But Hanks convinced them to stick it out, saying they owed it to the real soldiers to at least try to understand a fraction of what they went through. That exhaustion and brotherhood you see on screen came from real shared suffering. But here's the twist revealed in Secret Number 9. Matt Damon was deliberately excluded from that boot camp. Spielberg wanted the other actors to genuinely resent having to save Private Ryan, so he kept Damon comfortable while everyone else suffered. When Damon showed up on set fresh and clean, while everyone else had been through hell together, that tension was real. The other actors wouldn't talk to him between takes for the first few days. You can see it in their faces when they first meet Ryan. They don't have to act annoyed at this guy, they're risking everything to save, because they actually were annoyed. Damon has talked about how isolated he felt from the group because of this, which is exactly what his character needed to feel. He said it was the loneliest he'd ever been on a film set. Number 8 shows how Spielberg discovered Vin Diesel before anyone knew who he was. Diesel had spent $3,000 of his own money to make a 20-minute short film called Multifacial about a struggling mixed-race actor who can't get cast because he doesn't fit into any ethnic category. He wrote it, directed it, and starred in it, shooting the whole thing in 3 days. Spielberg saw this tiny independent film at Cannes and was so impressed that he wrote the character of Private Caparzo specifically for Diesel. This was before The Fast and the Furious, before Diesel was famous, when he was just a struggling actor who maxed out credit cards to make a short film. One short film got him cast in a Spielberg movie that changed his entire career. Diesel still credits this role as the one that launched everything else. Secret Number 7 reveals the daily battle Tom Sizemore faced just to keep his job. Sizemore had serious drug problems before filming, and the studio didn't want to hire him. Paramount executives explicitly told Spielberg not to cast him. Spielberg fought for him, but with one strict condition: Sizemore had to take a drug test every single day of production. If he failed even one test, Spielberg would fire him immediately and reshoot all his scenes with another actor, no matter the cost. Every morning at 6 a.m., before makeup, before breakfast, Sizemore had to prove he was clean before he could work. He later said this requirement might have saved his life because it forced him to stay sober during one of the most important roles of his career. That weight you see in his performance as Sergeant Horvath comes partly from a man fighting to keep his demons at bay every single day. Number 6 explains why you feel like you're inside a soldier's body during the beach landing. Sound designer Gary Rydstrom didn't just record gunfire and explosions. He created an entire geography of sound that puts you inside a human skull. When the camera goes underwater, the sound goes muffled exactly the way your ears work when submerged. When an explosion goes off near a character, you hear the ringing tinnitus that real soldiers experience. Bullets hitting sand make a different sound than bullets hitting metal or water or flesh. Rydstrom recorded World War II-era weapons and then carefully layered these sounds to create a three-dimensional space you navigate with your ears. He even recorded the specific sound of bullets passing through water by shooting into swimming pools and aquariums. The sound becomes so specific that you know exactly where you are on the beach without even looking. For secret number 5, we need to understand why John Williams, who created some of the most iconic movie music ever, barely put any music in this film. Williams and Spielberg agreed that combat should have no score at all. No heroic trumpets, no emotional strings telling you how to feel. Just the sound of chaos and death. The music only comes in during quiet moments of reflection or grief. During the battles, the score is replaced by breathing, gunfire, screams, and silence. Williams said it was the hardest score he ever had to write because he had to resist his instinct to support the action. This absence of music makes the violence feel documentary real instead of movie dramatic. Your emotions have nowhere to hide behind a swelling orchestra. Number 4 brings us to something amazing about those landing craft in the opening scene. Those aren't replicas or props. They're actual World War II Higgins boats that the production team tracked down in places like Palm Springs, of all places. Some were being used as tour boats, others were rotting in dockyards. These shallow draft landing craft were essential to D-Day, and Spielberg insisted on using real ones. They spent months restoring them to working condition, replacing engines, fixing rust damage, and making them seaworthy again. They then shipped them across the Atlantic to Ireland for filming. When you see soldiers cramped in those boats approaching the beach, they're sitting in the same metal boxes that carried real soldiers to their deaths in 1944. The rust is real, the cramped space is real, the metal ramp that drops down is the actual ramp that dropped on D-Day. Secret number 3 changes how you'll watch the entire movie. Spielberg shot the film almost entirely in story order, which never happens in Hollywood because it's expensive and inefficient. You have to move entire crews and equipment to follow the story instead of shooting all scenes in one location at once. But he wanted the actors to experience the story chronologically. They filmed Omaha Beach first, so the shock and trauma were fresh. As filming continued and characters died, those actors left and never came back. The remaining cast got smaller and more exhausted as the story progressed, just like their characters. By the time they filmed the final bridge battle, the fatigue and grief you see are partially real because the actors had been carrying these characters and losing castmates for months. Number 2 reveals something historically complicated about the letter that starts the whole mission. General Marshall reads the Bixby letter, supposedly written by Abraham Lincoln, to a mother who lost 5 sons in the Civil War. But historians have found evidence that Lincoln's secretary John Hay might have actually written it. The writing style matches Hay's other work more than Lincoln's. Plus, not all 5 Bixby sons actually died in the war. Some deserted, 1 was discharged, and only 2 definitely died in battle. Mrs. Bixby herself might have been a Confederate sympathizer who destroyed the original letter. The letter that launches this entire mission to save Private Ryan is based on a historical document that might be partly fake, written by the wrong person about sons who didn't all die. Spielberg knew this but used it anyway, because the emotion of the letter matters more than its complicated truth. And finally, the number 1 secret that makes everything else more powerful. Those cemetery scenes at the beginning and end weren't filmed on a set. The production got permission to film at the actual Normandy American Cemetery at Colleville-sur-Mer in France. Those are real graves of real soldiers. Over 9,000 Americans are buried there, right above the actual Omaha Beach. The French government maintains this cemetery immaculately, with grass cut to exact specifications and marble crosses cleaned regularly. When you see that old man walking among the crosses, he's walking through real graves of men who died on the beach you just watched get recreated. The tears are surrounded by actual death, not props. That silence you feel in those scenes comes from standing in a place where thousands of young men are actually buried. But there's more to the technical brilliance. The production buried air hoses under the beach in Ireland to create bullet impacts in the sand. They could trigger geysers of sand at exact moments as actors ran through specific zones. The color difference between the war scenes and the home front scenes was deliberate, with warmer tones at home to make you emotionally relax between combat sequences. The camera work intentionally cuts off information, shows partial faces, misses important action, because that's what real combat footage looks like when the cameraman is trying not to die. These 20 secrets show that Saving Private Ryan works because it takes away what movies usually give you. It removes music when you want comfort, restricts your view when you want to see everything, drains color when you expect vibrancy, and refuses to tell you who that old man is until you've earned the answer. Every technical choice, from the shutters to the sound to the chemistry of the film stock, was designed to make you feel like a soldier on that beach, not an audience member in a theater. The next time you watch Saving Private Ryan, you won't see a movie anymore. You'll see an elaborate magic trick where everything from the camera shutters to the fake blood formula to the boot camp psychology was engineered to break through your emotional defenses. You'll know that the Czech soldiers were begging for their lives in a language no one understood. You'll know that the exhaustion is partially real. The resentment for Private Ryan was manufactured, and that elderly man was never who you thought he was. If this changed how you see the film, hit that subscribe button for more hidden secrets in classic movies, and leave a comment about which detail surprised you the most.